No. You are completely missing the point. Hear me out. You are looking at this through the most incredibly cynical lens possible. I'm telling you, if you actually sit down and watch Sevolod Pudovkin's Mother, the 1926 version, without all this historical baggage you keep dragging into it, it is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, it is properly genius.
A masterpiece. A genius, look, I'm not saying it doesn't have historical significance. It obviously does. But calling it a masterpiece is just a bit overhyped, isn't it?
Overhyped.
Yes, overhyped. If you actually dig into the production, if you look at the reality of how this film was made, it's rather dull in its construction and, frankly, incredibly dodgy in places.
Dodgy.
Yeah.
You're calling it one of the foundational pillars of cinema dodgy.
Yes, absolutely dodgy. I mean, it's state-sponsored propaganda masked as an intimate character study, and if you can't see the strings being pulled behind the curtain, you're just buying into the 1920s Soviet PR machine.
Right, okay.
Cinema, the magic vehicle, a comprehensive guide. Journey 1, 1913 to 1950.
This is our roadmap for this argument, right? We're going by the book.
Let's go by the book, then.
And even the book, which is arguably the definitive text on this era, acknowledges the sheer scale of what Pudovkin accomplished here. You can't just dismiss it as a state pamphlet.
I'm not dismissing the book, mate. I'm reading the entirety of what the book tells us, which includes the reality of who this director was and who was paying his bills.
Okay, fine. Let's talk about the director. Let's look at Sevolod Pudovkin. Because to me, his background is exactly what makes this film so fascinating.
Fascinating is one word for it.
The guy is 30 years old in 1926. He is widely considered the second great director of silent Soviet cinema, right after Eisenstein. And he drops this massive 1,800-meter epic feature film debut produced by Mizrab Pomroz.
Massive, yes.
1,800 meters of pure emotional devastation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's monumental.
Wait, hold on a second. You can't be serious. You're just glossing over how he got that job. You're talking about his massive epic feature debut, but let's look at his resume before this weighty project landed in his lap.
His resume is brilliant.
What had he actually directed before Mother? Come on, look at the book. Remind us what his previous masterworks were.
I know exactly what he directed, and I think it's brilliant. He directed Shakhmatnaya Goryachka in 1925.
Which is exactly...
It's a two-reeler. It's a humorous account of a Moscow chess tournament.
A comedy short about people playing chess.
And an educational documentary about Ivan Pavlov's experiments on brain function. And that right there is my point. If you're listening to this and wondering why a chess comedy matters, think about it. Look at that combination. It is spot on.
Spot on for what? For putting audiences to sleep?
No, spot on for understanding human manipulation at a microscopic level. Think about it from a structural perspective.
Oh, here we go.
You've got a director who has just spent months studying human brain reactions, involuntary reflexes, classical conditioning with Pavlov. He is literally editing footage of how external stimuli create a physical emotional response. He is studying how to make a brain react on command.
Right, by watching dogs drool.
Combine that with a comedy director. And comedy is all about timing, right? It's all about the rhythm of a scene. You take a guy who understands the scientific manipulation of the brain and the precise timing of comedy, and you give him an emotional epic. I mean, he knows exactly how to manipulate an audience's emotions.
Hold on a second, hold on. You're building this massive romantic mythology around a guy whose CV was a complete shambles for a project of this magnitude. Let's look at the facts from cinema, the magic vehicle.
I am looking at the facts.
He didn't just decide to make Mother in some burst of independent artistic inspiration. He was commissioned.
Right, by the state. I know.
Not just the state, by Anatoly Lunacharsky, the Soviet People's Commissar of Enlightenment.
The guy responsible for culture and education, yes. I'm aware.
Enlightenment. Let's translate that for a second for anyone listening who isn't up on their 1920s Soviet bureaucracy. It means the Minister of Propaganda and Ideological Education.
That's a very harsh way to phrase it.
It's the accurate way to phrase it. Lunacharsky's entire job was to figure out how to use art to shape the new Soviet citizen. He didn't look at a chess comedy and a dog's saliva documentary and say, ah, yes, the genius of brain manipulation.
He saw potential.
He looked at a 30-year-old rookie director who hadn't established his own artistic ego yet, and he thought, here is a pliable young man. I can give him a massive state commission, and he will do exactly what he is told.
You're removing all his agency?
It wasn't about art. It was about Lunacharsky needing a vehicle to push a very specific message about class awareness in Tsarist Russia.
Oh, come off it. You make it sound like Pudovkin was just a puppet holding a megaphone.
He was a puppet holding a megaphone. Look at the assignment. Here, young man, take this outstanding revolutionary novel by Maxim Gorky and turn it into a film that shows the rise of class awareness among the proletariat.
But he made it beautiful.
It's an ideological order from the highest levels of the Kremlin. They specifically chose Mesropom Rus, which was this unique, semi-independent studio with German backing.
Because they had the gear.
Because they had the resources to make something that looked spectacular, yes. But the content was entirely dictated by the state.
But the way he executed that order, that's where the genius lies. Yes, it was a state commission. Yes, the Commissar of Enlightenment paid the bills. But you cannot watch the actual plot unfold. You cannot watch the intimacy of those characters and tell me that it's just a cold piece of ideological machinery.
I can, and I will.
No, you can't, because the story is entirely grounded in the human experience. Let's break down what he actually put on screen, because if you're listening to this and haven't seen the film, you need to understand the scale of the tragedy here. We're 1905, right? The 1905 revolution.
Right, the dress rehearsal for the real revolution in 1917.
Exactly. So you've got Pavel Vlasov. He's a young revolutionary. He's taking a stand against the brutal exploitation of the workers.
And against his father. Don't forget the father.
Right. His father, Mikhail, played by Alexander Chistyakov.
Yep.
And Mikhail is a drunkard. He's a police informer. He represents the absolute rot of the old system. And what happens? The father is killed trying to break a worker strike.
How very convenient for the plot.
It's a tragedy, but it leaves Pavel and his mother, Nilovna Vlasova, alone. Pavel becomes her only support. And the mother isn't some hardened political revolutionary. She's just a weary middle-aged woman trying to survive.
A terrified housewife, basically.
She's terrified of the authorities. So when the police come to conduct a house search, and by the way, brilliant little trivia for the book, the police officer conducting the search is played by Sevolod Pudovkin himself.
Are you joking? You think that's a brilliant cameo?
It's fantastic.
The director inserts himself as the oppressive force of the state. The irony is practically writing itself, mate. He's literally playing the role of the state enforcer, which is exactly what he was doing behind the camera.
Oh, that's such rubbish. It's just a Hitchcockian cameo. But listen what happens in the scene. The police are searching the house. The mother is terrified. And to save her son, she accidentally reveals the weapons Pavel has hidden under the floorboards.
Whoops.
She thinks if she cooperates, they'll show mercy. But they don't. Pavel gets a massively long jail sentence.
Because of course he does. The state needs a martyr.
Because that's the tragedy of the human condition. She betrays him out of love, and it breaks her. So Pavel is in prison. He eventually escapes during this incredibly bloody prison riot. The mother and son reunite at a street demonstration.
Very dramatic.
The cavalry charges. Pavel is killed by a police bullet right there at the demonstration.
Again, the martyr, it's so transparent.
And the mother, who has spent her whole life keeping her head down, who never cared about politics, who only cared about her boy, she realizes the truth. She adopts his cause, but as the book explicitly points out, she adopts it more from her heart than from her head.
Oh, how touching.
She unfurls the red banner of the revolution, stands over her son's dead body, and faces down the charging cavalry before she's killed herself.
Bravo. What a lovely, manufactured, incredibly convenient piece of melodramatic nonsense.
Manufactured. That's rubbish. When you watch Vera Baranovskaya play that scene where she accidentally betrays him during the house search, the emotion is raw. It is visceral.
It's well-acted propaganda.
And that is entirely because of the acting style Pudovkin utilized. He didn't just use random faces off the street, and he didn't use the standard silent film actors who were basically just mimes. He brought in Baranovskaya and Nikolai Bodlov, who played Pavel. These were leading stage actors.
Yes, stage actors. But film isn't a stage, is it?
Stage actors who used the Stanislavski method. This is 1926, and they were employing Stanislavski's method on film. If you're listening and you're used to modern acting, you have to realize how revolutionary this was.
I'm not denying they were skilled.
Standard silent film acting at the time was pantomime. It was big, exaggerated gestures, hands to the forehead to show sadness, wide eyes to show fear. But Stanislavski taught total identification of the actor with the character. Internal truth. Great economy of gesture.
Economy of gesture, yes, I read the book too.
When the mother points to those floorboards where the weapons are hidden, it's not some grand, theatrical, sweeping pantomime. It's small. It's hesitant. It's the economy of gesture that makes it so real. It's an intimate description of a woman's struggle for happiness, for herself, for her son, for the downtrodden. I mean, it breaks your heart.
Right, okay, let me stop you there. Because you are romanticizing a script that was engineered in a laboratory to produce exactly the reaction you are having.
It's not a laboratory, it's a film set.
Economy of gesture, total identification. Fine. I am not denying that Baranowskaya and Pavlov knew what they were doing. The Stanislavski method is effective, but you are ignoring the skeletal structure of the plot they were trapped in.
The plot is tragic and beautiful.
The plot is a propaganda schematic. Look at it objectively. Look at how these characters are constructed. You have the father, Mikhail. He isn't just a flawed guy. He is a drunkard and a police informer and a strikebreaker.
He's a product of his environment.
He is every single negative trait of the old Tsarist regime rolled into one cartoonish villain. And what happens to him? He dies early. He is conveniently removed from the narrative so that the mother and son can become pure, unblemished martyrs.
It's an allegory for the shedding of the old generation.
It's completely dodging the reality of human complexity. It's designed purely to push the ideological message that the rise of the working class is inevitable. The Commissar of Enlightenment needed a story that showed a weary middle-class woman waking up to the glorious revolution.
And he got a masterpiece.
He got a brochure. So Zarki, the scriptwriter, gives us a cartoon bad guy dad, a noble but doomed son, and a mother who magically transitions from terrified housewife to flag-waving revolutionary charging down horses. It's artificial.
It's dramatic pacing.
Even our source material, cinema, the magic vehicle, admits that the mother's final suicidal gesture now seems remote and artificial. It was meant to convey a firm belief in the inevitable rise of the working class. It's a political brochure disguised as a family drama.
You're being incredibly unfair to the emotional core of the film.
I'm being realistic.
Right.
And using the Stanislavski method just makes the medicine go down easier. It sneaks the propaganda past your critical faculties because you're crying over the mother's subtle gestures.
But you're punishing the film for the era it was born in. Of course, it has a political message. It's 1920s Soviet Russia. But Pudovkin elevated the brochure into high art.
Did he? Or did he just butcher a much better piece of art to make his brochure? Because if we want to talk about how artificial this message is, we need to talk about the original author. We need to talk about Maxim Gorky.
Right. Well, the film is based on Gorky's novel, Mother.
Yes. And here is the great irony of this entire production. This is the most damning piece of historical evidence in the whole book. You're sitting here praising Pudovkin for his intimate, emotional translation of this story. But explain to me how adaptations were actually handled back then. What was the standard rule for prestige Soviet film adaptations in the 1920s?
Yeah, the rule was strict fidelity to the literary original. You were basically supposed to photograph the book page by page.
Exactly, dogmatic fidelity. If you adapted a revolutionary novel, especially by someone as revered as Gorky, you did not mess with the text. But not in Zarki and Pudovkin. They ignored this completely. They adopted the total opposite approach.
Which was incredibly brave.
They didn't photograph it page by page. They introduced massive, substantial changes to the story just to highlight the main plot.
And hear me out. Ignoring that dogmatic page-by-page rule is exactly what makes Pudovkin a genius. He didn't just film a book. He translated a novel into pure cinema language.
Oh, cinematic language, right.
Literature and film are two completely different mediums. If you just film a book page by page, you get a boring, static play. By breaking the original text, he freed the story to work visually.
You can't be serious. He didn't break the text to make it cinematic. He broke it to sanitize it. Because if they had stayed faithful to Gorky's actual views, Lunacharsky would have had the whole production shut down.
What are you talking about? Gorky was the father of socialist realism. He was a hero of the state.
Gorky was the father of socialist realism, yes. If you're listening and don't know what that means, socialist realism was the mandated art style of the Soviet Union. It demanded that art depict reality not as it actually was, but in its revolutionary development.
Meaning, showing the ideal future.
Meaning, art had to be realistic in style, but utopian in its message. It had to show the glorious, inevitable triumph of the workers. Gorky helped pioneer this, but he became completely disgusted by what the Bolsheviks actually did when they took power.
Well, history is complicated.
The film ends with this triumphant, inevitable rise of the working class, right? The mother waving the red banner. But let's read what Maxim Gorky actually believed about the Kremlin, because he did not identify with them as the sole representatives of the Russian proletariat.
Okay, yes, the book has that quote from 1918.
It's not just a quote, it is a prophetic warning. Gorky said, and I am quoting directly from Cinema, the magic vehicle here, "The Kremlin authorities are treating the Russian workers like dry twigs. They set fire to them."
It's a strong image.
I'll continue. Maybe this fire will turn into a pan-European revolution. But the Russian proletariat is being used in an experiment for which it will pay with its blood, its life, and worse, by a long disenchantment with socialist ideals.
Right.
Like dry twigs. They set fire to them. Gorky knew as early as 1918, during the Red Terror and the Civil War, that the working class was just being used as kindling for a Kremlin experiment. He knew they were going to pay with their blood.
That was 1918. Things were chaotic.
And he held this opinion through the 1920s and into the 1930s as socialist realism was completely distorted by the state. So Pudovkin and Zarki take this man's novel, they strip out all of that nuance, all of that profound fear of the Kremlin's bloody experiment, they completely sanitize it.
They streamlined it for a feature film.
And they use Gorky's respected name to promote a simplistic, yay, the revolution is glorious and inevitable message. It's historically tragic.
The film is set in 1905. It's about the 1905 revolution against the Tsar. It's not about the Bolsheviks in 1918 and the 1920s.
Oh, come on. You think a Soviet propaganda film commissioned by the Commissar of Enlightenment and released in 1926 is just a historical piece about 1905?
It's a historical drama?
It's an allegory for the present. They were using the 1905 setting to justify the current regime. They took Gorky's characters and forced them to dance to Lunacharsky's tune. The mother unfurling the banner isn't an act of defiance against oppression. It's an advertisement for the Kremlin. The very Kremlin that Gorky said was burning the workers like dry twigs.
Look, I get the historical tragedy of it. I really do. It's grim that Gorky felt his ideals were being twisted. But you have to separate the political context from the formal achievement of the film.
You can't separate them. The form serves the politics. The editing was literally designed to bypass the brain and plant the politics in the heart.
But the form is undeniable.
Yeah.
Even if you hate the message, even if you think the plot is entirely manufactured and the adaptation is a betrayal of Gorky, you cannot deny the technical wizardry on display in Mother.
I'm not denying he knew how to splice film.
The film's legendary status doesn't rely on its story. Our own source material says this. It says the film owes its position among the great achievements of cinema, not to the actual story, but to the form through which it is conveyed.
Fine, let's talk about the form. Let's talk about the editing, because this is where your Pavlov theory comes back, isn't it?
Yes. Let's talk about the montage, because this is where Pudovkin actually changes the world. Mother is a model of narrative structure. It is one of the best examples of the creative use of film editing in history. Now, obviously, if you're a film buff listening to this, you know we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room, Sergei Eisenstein.
Right, Eisenstein had just made Strike.
Exactly. And the violence and the dynamism in Mother, the way it shows epic events like the prison riot and the cavalry charge, it is absolutely inspired by Eisenstein's Strike.
But?
Their methods completely clashed. They were rivals in theory.
They had completely different philosophies of what editing should do to the human brain. Remind the listener how Eisenstein operated, because it's the total opposite of Pudovkin.
Right, so Eisenstein used what we call intellectual montage.
The dramatic collision of consecutive images.
A collision. Eisenstein wanted to smash two unrelated images together to create a third intellectual idea in the viewer's mind. So in Strike, he shows workers being gunned down, and then he cuts to a bull being slaughtered in an abattoir. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis.
It's very aggressive.
He's forcing you to think, the workers are being slaughtered like animals. It's aggressive. It's meant to shock the intellect. But Pudovkin employed constructive montage.
Constructive montage, yes. Which the book defines as the fluent linking of narrative phrases to make them more direct and communicative.
Fluent linking. It's not about smashing things together to shock the viewer. It's about building an emotional bridge, brick by brick. Pudovkin uses the editing to literally guide your emotional state. Mother is basically a masterclass in the functional use of poetic allegory.
Poetic allegory.
Yes. The way he uses visual finesse to comment on the action. Let me give you the three most famous examples from the film, because if you haven't seen them, they are staggering.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Example number 1. The mother gets news of the planned prison break for Pavel. Now, a lesser director would just show her smiling or maybe crying tears of joy. But Pudovkin doesn't just show the emotion, he conveys it through constructive montage. He cuts to images that evoke the feeling of sudden joy.
He cuts away from the actor to tell you how to feel.
He enhances the feeling. Example number 2. He reveals the latent motives of human actions by showing the reaction of the prisoners to the arrival of spring. The melting of the snow, the water running. It represents their yearning for freedom. You don't need a title card that says the prisoners want to be free. You just see the water melting and you feel it.
It's very literal.
And then the absolute crown jewel, example number 3. The street demonstration at the end. The workers are marching. The revolution is swelling. And Pudovkin intercuts the marching workers with images of ice breaking up on a river. The river is thawing. The massive chunks of ice are cracking and surging forward with unstoppable momentum.
Yes, the ice. We've all seen the ice.
The flow of the river is the flow of the people. The way he links the ice breaking on the river to the street demonstration, it's not just a fancy edit. It proves that visual finesse actually enhances the emotional impact of a scene. It doesn't weaken the dynamism, it explodes it.
Oh, for heaven's sake. Hold on a second. Hold on.
You don't like the ice-breaking metaphor?
You don't think the ice-breaking metaphor is a bit? Film School 101.
Film School 101. He invented the school.
It is so incredibly heavy-handed. Look, the ice is breaking, the river is flowing. Do you get it, comrades? The revolution is an unstoppable force of nature. It's a sledgehammer.
It was 1926. No one had seen anything like this before. You are looking at it with the jaded eyes of a modern viewer who's seen a million commercials rip this off.
I am looking at it as a viewer who respects subtlety. Yes, I concede that his editing techniques are foundational to modern cinema. I will give you that.
Thank you.
Constructive montage, the fluent linking of narrative phrases. Yes, it paved the way for continuity editing as we know it today. But to sit there and applaud the poetic allegory of showing prisoners looking at spring, it's just manipulative. It's exactly what you said at the beginning. He's treating the audience like Pavlov's dogs.
That's the brilliance of it.
Ring the bell, show the melting ice, make the audience feel revolutionary fervor. He isn't making you think, he's just programming your reflexes.
But that's what cinema is. Cinema is the manipulation of time and space to create emotion. You're just mad because he did it better than anyone else at the time.
Yeah.
You're mad because the illusion works so well.
I'm mad because he used a profound medium to sell a lie. He used brilliant, fluent, constructive montage to sell the idea that the people waving the red banner were ushering in a utopia, all while the people actually living in that society were being treated like dry twigs in a fire.
You can't blame the editor for the politicians.
The technical wizardry is just a shiny coat of paint over a rotting ideology. You cannot praise the mechanism of the manipulation while ignoring what it was manipulating people into.
But the art survives the ideology. We are still studying the ice breaking on the river 100 years later, not because we believe Lunacharsky's propaganda, but because Pudovkin discovered a fundamental truth about how images affect the human soul.
He discovered a fundamental truth about how to bypass the human brain. There's a difference.
Well, look, if you are listening to this and you want to understand how he bypassed the brain or how he elevated the souls, depending on which one of us you believe, you need to actually read the source material. I highly recommend picking up Cinema, the Magic Vehicle, specifically Journey 1, 1913 to 1950. Stop being a lazy enthusiast. Stop just taking our word for it. Read the book, see the historical grit, look at the full film credits, understand the context of Mesropom Rus and Gorky and Lunacharsky for yourself.
And when you do read it, you will probably agree with me that the film is hopelessly politically compromised and that Gorky's warnings were far more valuable than Pudovkin's editing tricks.
Oh, whatever. But think about this as we wrap up, and to everyone listening, I genuinely want you to mull this over. If a piece of art is built on a foundation of absolute political distortion,
Which it is.
if it completely twists the original author's desperate warning about workers being used as dry twigs in an experiment, can its brilliant editing and its technical wizardry ever truly scrub the blood off its hands? Or does great cinema always excuse terrible history?
It absolutely doesn't excuse.
Think about it. Read the book. We're done here.
It's completely irresponsible to suggest that a good edit makes up for...
Look at the ice. The ice is breaking. Goodbye.